Coming up, the story of a journeyman rocker who finally scored fame when he reached his 30s. His breakout was a provocative sledgehammer, misinterpreted by innuendo that led the way to one of the biggest albums of the 80s. In 1981, he was on top of the business that he loathed. But ironically, just a few years later, after releasing his highest charting single, in fact, his career suddenly just plummeted. He just up and disappeared. The details of the slow climb and the rapid fall of an 80s icon is coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you know in your heart that rock and roll is king, you're gonna dig this channel of pure music nostalgia, stories straight from the legends. Make sure that you subscribe right now, hit the red button, click the bell, the notification, so you're always in the know of our latest interviews coming out. Also, check out our content on Patreon. It's a way to support us, to keep it a daily channel, keep the music alive. Massachusetts-born William "Billy" Squire worked tirelessly for 12 years to achieve breakout success in the dog-eat-dog music business. In 1981, he wrote a song about the exploitation of artists by the record industry. The rich, powerful label tycoons that followed a shameful practice that he called the stroke. When Billy Squire was 14 years old, he put his first band together with some school buddies. I believe they called themselves the Reltneys. Anybody know what that is? Well, one of the boys in the band discovered it was a Cockney expression for the dominant feature of the male anatomy. Yeah, he thought it'd be funny. Some things never change, including the sense of humor of a teenage boy. Billy began his professional career in 1968 with his first public performances in the band Psychedelic Supermarket. I've always thought that was such a cool band name. I played various gigs at the Boston nightclub Kenmore Square. From there, Billy formed several groups. They fizzled out pretty quickly, though. With a whopping $40 in his pocket, though, he decided to take his talents to the Big Apple, New York City, writing songs while looking for new opportunities. Billy joined the New York City-based band The Sidewinders, which was another flash in the pan, and then came the band Piper. As the lead vocalist of Piper, Billy started to attract the attention of bigger game within the label community. Actually, in 1980, Billy's first solo album, Tell the Tape, was released. It was a sweet milestone for Billy. Having a solo album validated him internally, and he began to gain confidence to attract a bigger spotlight. After many years of battling through failed bands and multiple setbacks, he was up and down, Billy was ready to make a statement to the music world. Tell the Tape didn't produce any radio hits though, but the second single, The Big Beat, it had an anthemic percussive groove that's actually been heavily sampled. Nearly 300 recorded songs have used it. Billy was majorly influenced by the Rolling Stones and the Beatles. He also loved Queen. His dream was to have Queen co-founder and guitar genius Brian May produce his second solo album. It was called Don't Say No. And actually, Brian May was interested, but he had to pass due to scheduling conflicts. Since he couldn't do it, Brian recommended that Billy hire his friend Reinhold Mack, who had actually just produced Queen's recent LP, The Game. Ready, raise a little thing all over. For the recording sessions of Don't Say No, Billy was loaded with strong material, including a track that seemed to be 12 years in the making. It was an indictment against the disingenuous practices of the record moguls, if you will. Something that Billy Squire knew a little bit all too well. Billy called the two-faced behavior of the music industry the stroke. It ran rampant through the ranks, as Billy put it. If you're in the game, then the stroke's the word. Then the stroke's the word. In Billy Squire's view, to make it in the business, it don't take no rhythm, don't take no style. If you got a thirst for killing, all you need to do is grab your vial of cocaine and go. Got a thirst for killing, grab your vial, yeah. Verse 2 described the stroke. It all starts with a deal with the devil. Put your right hand out, give a firm handshake, Talk to me about the one big break.
Talk to me about that one big break.
Once the stroke is complete, the performer is no longer an artist. They are property. They're an asset that creates music that is no longer pure. It is tainted with the hands of commercialism and greed. But you got to bow to fate and do the stroke.
Keep your contributions by your side and strong.
The stroke throws a vicious straight punch to the senses with a pulverizing drum beat intro. Man, very similar to the way that Billy kicked off the big beat. It's so cool. That distinctive hard-hitting drum beat on the stroke was generated, actually, by recording the snare drum backwards and playing it just ahead of the real drum. The musical arrangement with that gang-chanting chorus is tribal, evoking a military cadence reminiscent of the stomping march of Stadium Rock and Queen's We Will Rock You.
All right.
The martial overtones of the stroke strikes a climax in the song's coda, when the track Squire and Reinl brilliantly reenact the Song of the Volga Boatman, a traditional Russian lament originally sung by homeless peasants while doing the backbreaking work of hauling barges and vessels upstream. Now that's a significant part of the song for several reasons, really. The chanting chorus over the pounding shuffle is very compelling. It's also a swelling reinforcement for what the dark subject matter that Billy is trying to portray of this composition. Now, I know what you're thinking. I mean, Billy may have been inspired to write the stroke as a poetic expose about schmoozing and backstabbing. But yeah, I mean, the track is packed with double entendres. The innuendos made the song pretty provocative. It was risque for radio and rebelliously cool for the active youth that bought the 45, or the album. Plus, the song was an irresistible stone-cold rock anthem. As the lead single from Billy Squire's sophomore album, Don't Say No, the stroke, it roared out of the gate as if Billy Squire was a bona fide superstar. He was ready for the limelight. Really came out of nowhere to become one of the hottest songs in all of America. The stroke, it shot to number 3 on the Billboard Top Tracks chart. It went to number 17 on the Billboard Hot 100. You may not think that's very much, but that position is misleading because it was one of the most requested songs all throughout the summer of 1981, if you look at the radio list. Due to the perceived sexual connotations, the song was heavily day-parted and relegated to the late-night airplay. Now, as we continue to tell this story, it gets really good here. I want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, the glasses I always wear. Right now, telling you can get a complete pair of prescription glasses starting at just $6.95. I mean, the average pair of frames at Zenni is over 80% off regular retail prices. That means you can buy multiple pairs for what you would normally pay for just one. You choose the style, the color, the shape, and whatever looks good on you. You see how you look before you buy. You gotta check it out today. It's so cool. Check it out, the info button here. Click on that link or the link below to get our special POR deal. Billy Squire took songwriting very seriously. For a time, he studied at the acclaimed Berklee College of Music. The stroke became widely popular, and then he claimed that he would never intentionally write a frivolous song. But he wasn't mad at the fuss that the song created. The stroke does have a raw, dangerous carnality to it. It's something Billy Squire was happy to embrace. Billy had a tight group of musicians that made the stroke such an impactful recording, one of the best of the 80s. Of course, I already mentioned Bobby Schoenhardt on drums. He was a mainstay with Billy as a core band member over the first 3 solo albums. Later in the 80s, Bobby played with the likes of Ted Nugent, Peter Wolf, and also Alice Cooper. Bassist Mark Clark also performed backing vocals. Clark was part of the touring band for the Monkees and Uriah Heep. After his time with Billy, Clark had stints with Mountain and Ian Hunter as well. Playing lead guitar was the unheralded Kerry Sheriff. Sheriff was invaluable on every cut included on the Don't Say No album. One of the super cool highlights of The Stroke, amongst many, is Kerry trading riffs with Billy in the chorus. I mean, Billy laying down the melodic rhythm on his 57 Strat, followed by Kerry's crunchy licks. Squire employed Sheriff as a significant part of his touring band for the Don't Say No tour, as well as the Tell the Tape tour. But he was out of the mix for the follow-up LP, Emotions in Motion, a year later. After his work with Squire, Sheriff was hired for various session gigs, collaborated with Eddie Jobson, and he wrote some tunes for the Jefferson Starship spin-off KBC that happened in '86. Don't Say No took the industry by storm, the album. It eventually sold over 4 million units in the US alone. Really good for coming out of nowhere. It made Billy Squire an international rock star. After taking his lumps working The Stroke for 12 years, Billy Squire had finally arrived. Now, in addition to The Stroke, Don't Say No was full of album rock bangers like In the Dark, My Kind of Lover, Lonely as the Night, featuring a gripping solo by Kerry Sheriff. I've always heard Billy Squire's singing style to be very distinctive. It touches the swagger of a Robert Plant with a Freddie Mercury-like vivaciousness. It's the way he navigates those dynamics that gives him a particular vocal identity. It's unmistakable.
Don't you take no chances. Keep your eye on top.
In the studio sessions for Don't Say No, Billy applied a deceptively simple trick he learned from the crafty Reinhold Mack to achieve a unique tonality to his vocal. Billy placed one vocal mic within close range and another mic farther away in another area of the recording room where it sounded better to his ears. The key was finding the right location where the amp sounded the way that Billy wanted it and fix the mic in that precise spot. The Stroke has been synced in some memorable movie scenes, such as the Trans Am clip in Adam Sandler's Billy Madison, came out in '95. And a funny skating segment with Will Ferrell in Blades of Glory, of course, in 2007.
How do you describe something like that?
The Stroke has also been sampled many times. Two of the most prominent is Mickey Avalon's Stroke Me in 2009 and Eminem's Berserk in 2013.
It's as easy as 1, 2.
I always loved The Stroke. I remember recording it off the radio many times. The album was always sold out in the record store that was in the mall that was about a half hour from my home. So I had to settle for my radio version. I remember I had to record it like 4 or 5 times off the radio before I finally got a copy without the frickin' DJ talking over the song. Tell you, kids today will never know the struggle. Billy Squire followed the monstrous success of Don't Say No with his third solo LP, Emotions in Motion, in '82. It wasn't as big as its predecessor, but it went double platinum, selling more than 1 million copies at the time and then 2 million overall, including the number 1 rock track, Everybody Wants You, one of Billy's best, really.
Give it all away. Everybody wants you.
Next up was 1984's Signs of Life. And there was great anticipation around the release of that album. The excitement was manifested in the immediate multi-format airplay of the lead single, Rock Me Tonight. It was Billy's highest charting single, actually. It peaked at number 15 on the Billboard Hot 100, went to number 1 on the Billboard Rock Tracks. But the video for Rock Me Tonight, yeah, that was a disaster. We just talked about a pretty bad music video a few weeks ago, but in the book, I Want My MTV, The Uncensored Story of the Music Video Revolution, published in 2011. Great book, you gotta go check it out. The Rock Me Tonight video is described as one of the all-time worst in MTV history. Billy was horrified when he saw the finished video directed by Kenny Ortega. Billy's label, Capitol Records, he told him, don't worry, since the single was on fire. However, Billy's girlfriend at the time believed otherwise. She told Billy the video was going to ruin him. As the video was getting heavy rotation on MTV, Billy was on an extended tour, and he recalled how ticket sales for his shows, they significantly declined after the video came out in some cities. He was playing in front of half-empty arenas. Unfortunately, everything that Billy Squire had worked so hard for over a long, tireless career crumbled with a music video, and he couldn't stop it. The commercial decline was clearly evident when his fourth solo album, Enough Is Enough, came out in 1986, not long after. Signs of Life peaked at number 11 on the Billboard album chart, whereas Enough Is Enough struggled and plateaued at number 61. Enough Is Enough featured one of the last recordings by Freddie Mercury, who actually provided backing vocals on the single Love Is the Hero. The career of Billy Squire is a graphic example of the challenges an artist faces to make it in the brutal record business. It may take you decades to achieve measurable success, or quite possibly elude you forever. And if an artist finally gets rewarded for their dedication and perseverance, it can just as easily crumble at their feet in just an instant. An artist works so hard to have a hit, and then when they do, it's expected to happen over and over and over again. When the hits stop coming, a label drops you and you're left scrambling to try to resurrect your career or any semblance of a career. Billy Squire, for his part, put the odyssey of hit-making in perspective with a biting lyric in The Stroke. When you found you bled me, slip on by.
When you find you bled me, slip on by, keep on.
I'll say this about Billy Squire. He made some great music, and he deserves the recognition of being one of the rock icons of the 80s. No one can take that away from him. Don't Say No, the album, it ranks as one of the true classic albums of the rock era, in my opinion. When the spotlight dimmed for Billy Squire, he opted for a rather simple lifestyle, quite different from the fast pace he lived in the 80s. Billy takes care of a 20-acre garden plot in New York City Central Park, and he's a volunteer for the landscape conservation at Central Park that is near his home in Manhattan. When I found that out, I just thought that was so cool. He's just, what a guy. There are the occasional shows, though, including a guest appearance at the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival that happened in 2012. In the 90s, Billy reimagined his signature song, making a bluesier swamp rock recording of The Stroke that he also performs to a more intimate audience these days. It's been more than 40 years since the release of The Stroke, if you can believe that. And, Don't Say No, the album. But Billy still has the urge to make new music. He's made some new tracks available in 2023, including a song called Give Her a Kiss. Luckily, instead of worrying about who to stroke, or who's going to give him the stroke, if you will, when he's finished recording now, Billy can leave his private studio and retire to the peace and tranquility of his garden. There's no hypocrisy there. Thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about Billy Squire and The Stroke. I'm telling you, Billy, he's so underappreciated. What do you think about Billy's run of hits? What are your memories of these songs, of this album? If you dig our content, I'd love for you to take a second to subscribe below, hit the red button. We'd love to have you as part of our community here. We're always celebrating the greatest of music. And check us out on Patreon as well. We have further content there that helps us to keep the music alive. That's what we're all about. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth.